Okay, let's dive straight into a truly fascinating source today. We're looking at excerpts from an English translation of the Bhagavad Gita,
Hmm.
and this one's by Dr. Giridhar Bore. Now, what's really interesting here, I think, is the translator's background.
Yeah.
He's a computer scientist, a prolific inventor,
Right.
and it seems he's applied that same focus, that sort of analytical skill from the tech world, to grappling with this ancient text.
That's right. And you can see that focus. It's clearly resonated too. You mentioned the downloads.
Yeah, over 50,000 downloads, 90 countries. It's got reach.
Definitely. And the source material itself, the intro bits, they give us insight into the, let's say, foundation of this work.
How so?
Well, it includes blessings, introductions. They really highlight the lineage of scholars this comes from, specifically the Dvaita philosophy tradition.
Okay, Dvaita, that's the dualistic school.
Theistic dualism, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a specific guru Vandana paying respects to Sri Visyadhara Madhava Tuta Swamiji, tracing back to Sri Madhvacharya.
So it signals this isn't just a casual reading.
Not at all. It's rooted in a deep, respected teaching tradition. That context is important.
Right. So for you listening, our mission today is to take this specific material, the insights, the explanations offered in this translation, and really extract the most important nuggets.
Mm-hmm.
The Bhagavad Gita, often called the greatest psychological manual ever written.
No, to say that, yeah.
So we want to give you that shortcut, basically, to being well-informed on its core ideas, filtered through this, unique lens.
Absolutely. And we're better to start than the beginning, setting the stage.
Makes sense.
The Gita is nestled within that huge epic, the Mahabharata. And this translation actually mentions the epic having 18 volumes.
18, okay.
And it points out that number 18 is significant. Apparently, the Sanskrit word ja.
Meaning victory.
Yeah, victory. It apparently has a numerical value that adds up to 18.
Huh. So like a symbolic link.
Kind of suggesting the triumph of good over evil is woven right in, And the Gita, seen as the essence of the Mahabharata, is central to that whole theme.
And the stage itself. The battlefield. Kurukshetra.
Which this source notes is pointedly called Dharmakshetra.
A field of righteousness.
Exactly. That name alone adds immense weight to what's about to happen.
And we're thrown right into chapter 1, seeing it all through Arjuna's eyes. He's there, ready for battle.
But then he looks across, and he sees his own relatives, his teachers, people he respects, even friends.
On the other side, ready to fight him.
And he's just overcome. Grief, confusion. He refuses to fight.
His arguments are so human, aren't they?
Deeply. He fears the sin, the terrible sin of destroying families. He thinks it'll lead to societal chaos, degradation.
So his duty as a warrior clashes head-on with his emotions, his relationship.
Violently, yeah. He's completely confused, drops his weapon, just overwhelmed.
And the source contrasts this, interestingly, with Duryodhana's perspective just before the war.
Right. Duryodhana's counting warriors, noting their loyalty, how ready they are to die for him.
But what's telling is...
He doesn't mention his own brothers.
Right.
And crucially, he totally overlooks the real power there, Krishna's presence.
Because Krishna isn't actually going to use weapons.
Exactly. So Duryodhana just discounts him. This miscalculation, this failure to recognize the divine presence is highlighted as a key factor in his eventual defeat.
It's a huge blind spot.
Massive. And we hear all this through Sanjaya, remember?
Right, who has divine vision granted by sage Vedavyasa. He's relaying it all to the blind king Dhritarashtra.
Yeah, who's initially shocked by news like Bhishma falling.
What's so striking, I think, and incredibly relatable even now, is Arjuna's struggle itself.
Absolutely.
That feeling. Being overwhelmed by a massive choice, paralyzed by fear of the consequences, questioning your duty when it conflicts with, everything you feel.
That's not just ancient history. It's a universal human experience. We all face versions of that, And that crisis, that emotional existential meltdown, leads us right into chapter 2.
Which this translation calls a summary of the whole Gita's teachings.
Pretty much. This is where the big philosophical concepts get laid out, starting to answer those core questions about life's purpose that Arjuna and maybe you listening are grappling with.
Okay, so first, key concept. The nature of the individual soul. What does this translation say?
It says individual souls are indestructible, eternal, no beginning, no end.
So they don't die when the body dies?
Nope, they persist.
And in contrast, what about the supreme soul, the Lord Almighty?
Described very differently. The Lord pervades everywhere, also eternal, yes, but possesses a transcendental body, one that's never destroyed.
Transcendental body. Okay.
And he's full of all auspicious attributes, totally devoid of any blemishes, and fundamentally superior to individual souls.
Which is why the Lord is considered worthy of worship.
Exactly. And this translation mentions the Lord actually gives human forms to souls, kind of as a vehicle for their spiritual journey.
Okay, so you have these distinct eternal individual souls, and then the supreme soul, the Lord. How does this translation lay out their relationship?
Well, key idea presented is that the Lord is the controller, the activator of everything and everyone, the ultimate root cause of the universe's existence.
Right.
Individual souls have what's called dependent doership, meaning their ability to act, to do things, is enabled by the Lord. The Lord is the independent doer.
Okay, so the Lord is within all beings.
He resides within all beings, yeah.
Yeah.
Witnessing their activities, activating them based on each soul's innate abilities, their inherent nature.
That's fascinating, at this idea that despite all the differences between souls, their varied experiences, the Lord exists uniformly within everyone.
It's a core point. Then we get to nature, or prakriti.
Which is described as inert.
Inert, yeah. Made up of 8 parts: earth, water, fire, wind, space, mind, intellect, and individuation or ego.
And acting on this inert nature are the gunas.
The 3 qualities, right? Satsa, piety or goodness. Rajas, passion, activity. And tamas, ignorance, inertia.
And these define our personality.
Yeah.
And bind us.
That's the idea. They define personality, influence all our activities, usually it's a mix of them, and they bind a person to the material world.
But the Lord is beyond these.
Partially, yes.
Yeah.
Stated to be beyond these qualities, controlling them.
So given these concepts, soul, Lord, nature, this translation emphasizes something called panchabheda.
The 5-fold differences, yeah. Based on proofs within the text, it asserts that these 3 categories, the Lord, individual souls, and inert objects or matter, are fundamentally irreducibly distinct from each other.
That seems like a really core philosophical stance.
It is, especially for the Dvaita school this translation aligns with.
Okay, so moving from those foundations, the Gita, as presented here, lays out different paths to understanding to liberation.
Right, and a core idea, stressed repeatedly, is performing your prescribed duty, your karma.
But how you do it matters, right?
Massively. Doing it as an offering to the Lord without expectation of the outcome. Nishkama karma.
No attachment to the results.
Exactly. Presented as absolutely essential for your spiritual journey, for liberation.
And that leads into the path of action, karma yoga.
This translation presents performing duties to society as everyone's obligation. For Arjuna, being a prince, a warrior, his duty is clear. Fight the just war.
And it says you need both action and knowledge, karma and jnana.
You do. They work together. And the source notes, while the Lord enables all activity, he himself isn't impacted by it. He acts out of compassion, setting an example.
So the idea is that learned people understand the Lord is causing actions based on innate nature.
Right. And that our senses, our mind, are controlled by deities, ultimately under the Lord. Approaching duties with sincerity is key to overcoming desire.
Okay, then complementing action is the path of knowledge, jnana yoga.
Yeah, knowledge helps you understand the Lord, understand reality. Spiritual knowledge is called the purest thing there is.
Like a boat to cross worldly troubles.
That's the analogy used, yeah. Crossing worldly afflictions. But here's an important point this source emphasizes. Just reading books isn't enough.
You need to control the mind and senses, too.
Absolutely. Mere book knowledge is insufficient without that control. Ignorance is seen as covering the soul's innate knowledge.
So how do you overcome that ignorance?
By gaining proper understanding through scriptures and teachers, that's called indirect knowledge.
And that leads to?
Direct knowledge. Self-realization. Understanding the Lord's activities in the world is part of this. The fire of knowledge, it says, can burn off the negative effects of past actions.
Interesting. Okay, then there's the path of meditation, dhyana yoga.
Right, the internal aspect of yoga. This requires, well, significant effort. Controlling the senses, controlling the mind.
The mind, friend or foe.
Can be your best friend or your worst enemy, the translation says. Depends if you control it.
And if you do manage to control it.
It leads to deep conviction, inner bliss. There are specific instructions, posture, location for meditation. Cleanliness is stressed.
What if you try but don't fully succeed in one lifetime?
There's a reassuring note. Sincere efforts are never wasted. They create opportunities in future lives.
That's hopeful.
It is. The mind is naturally fickle, strong, hard to control. It acknowledges that. But the message is clear. It is controllable with practice and detachment.
Okay, finally, and this seems particularly important in this tradition, Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion.
Yes. This involves focusing your mind exclusively on the Lord.
And this translation calls it the supreme path.
Supreme and, crucially, the easiest way to attain liberation compared to, say, worshiping other deities for temporary gains.
Why easier?
Because pure, unadulterated devotion is said to lead directly to understanding the Lord and reaching his abode permanently. Worshipping other deities isn't forbidden, but the focus should be the supreme Lord for eternal bliss. Those other deities grant temporary rewards, often sought for material reasons.
Got it. So devotion is the most direct route.
According to this perspective, yes, the most effective and highest path.
Okay, let's unpack how this source material describes the divine itself in a bit more detail. The Lord's attributes.
Presented as infinite, auspicious, ultimately beyond full comprehension, even for the gods.
So eternal, the ultimate controller.
Root cause of everything, the supreme leader. And this translation points out the Lord is the source of all the good qualities in beings. Intelligence, forgiveness, equanimity, you name it.
There's that description that sounds almost contradictory.
Yeah, it's profound. He activates senses, but has no material senses himself, isn't impacted by events, yet consumes everything. Devoid of material attributes, yet full of all auspicious attributes.
The idea being he pervades everywhere and is the ultimate thing to be known.
Exactly, the ultimate object of knowledge.
Then chapter 10 gets into the divine manifestations, Vibhuti Yoga.
Right, and this isn't saying the Lord is only these things, but that his special presence makes certain superior entities or phenomena stand out.
Examples given are like Vasudeva among his clan, Arjuna among the Pandavas.
Dhananjaya, yeah. Vyasa among sages. Vyasa is even called a direct form, an avatar. But it extends beyond beings.
To inanimate objects, qualities.
Yeah, his presence is in qualities like fame or memory, even certain activities like the skill and action, and in the very energy powering the sun, the moon, the fire.
And the source stresses, these are just examples.
Just examples. The manifestations are infinite.
Following that, chapter 11, the big one, the universal form, Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga.
Yeah, Arjuna is granted this vision. Sees the Lord's vast, sometimes terrifying, all-encompassing form. Everything is in him.
And seeing this is described as incredibly difficult.
Exceedingly difficult, really emphasizes the Lord's immense power and scale.
And within this vision, the Lord tells Arjuna something crucial about the battle.
Right, that the warriors on the other side are already effectively defeated by the divine plan. Time itself has already claimed them. Arjuna is just the instrument.
So it confirms his victory is inevitable, helps him understand the bigger picture.
Exactly. Helps him overcome his hesitation. The source notes Arjuna's awe, his total acknowledgement of the Lord's supremacy after seeing this.
Then chapter 15, Purushottama Yoga, highlighted as containing core teachings.
Very much so in this translation. It emphatically identifies the Lord as the supreme being, distinct from all other types of existence, reinforcing that Dvaita philosophy again.
Dualism, right?
And the Lord explicitly states here, he is the primary subject matter of the Vedas.
What about the banyan tree analogy?
Ah, yes. Used to illustrate the structure of reality. The Lord is the ultimate foundational root. Sentient nature, often linked with Lakshmi, is like the dependent roots spreading out. And the principles of material nature, the gunas, are the branches and leaves.
A complex image.
It is. This translation also touches on the Lord's immense timescale here, his day and night representing vast cycles of cosmic creation and dissolution.
Okay, so shifting to how these concepts apply more directly to us. Human nature, chapter 16.
Discusses human nature, broadly categorizing it as divine or demoniac. And importantly, this is based on inherent traits, not just outward appearance or birth.
Divine nature leads towards liberation.
Demoniac towards downfall, entanglement. And a key trait of the demoniac nature described here is viewing the world as fundamentally unreal, or maybe self-caused, not dependent on the Lord.
Interesting. Then chapter 17 focuses on faith and sincerity.
Yeah, explaining that the type of faith you have, sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, is linked to your innate nature, those gonas again.
And this influences choices. Food, sacrifice.
Food, sacrifice, austerity, charity, yes. Sattvic actions are done with sincerity, without expecting rewards for the right reasons.
Austerity. It breaks that down.
Into physical, like showing respect, cleanliness, vocal speaking truth that's beneficial, not causing distress, and mental calmness, focus, controlling the mind.
And faith and sincerity are crucial.
Absolutely essential, it says, for any activity to be truly beneficial here and in the afterlife. Like sattvic food promotes health, longevity, peace of mind. Tamasic food is stale, impure.
Okay. And bringing it all back to Arjuna's initial problem, that duty.
The source absolutely reiterates the importance of performing your own prescribed duty, your specific karma.
Even if imperfectly.
Even if imperfectly. Better that, it says, than trying to do someone else's duty, even if you could do it perfectly. That path, your own duty done properly, is the way to earn the Lord's grace and achieve liberation.
And this applies to everyone, not just warriors.
Everyone. Duties are adapted to context. Ascetics, for example, their duty might be shnanayanya, the sacrifice of knowledge, through study and teaching.
And this translation adds a nuance about responsibility.
Yes, it emphasizes that while the Lord pervades and powers all activities, individuals are held responsible for the outcomes. Why? Because the Lord activates their intent and effort based on their unique, innate nature and past karma.
So the learned understand this dependence.
While the ignorant mistakenly think they act entirely on their own steam.
Right. Okay, finally, the qualities of someone who is dear to the Lord. A summary.
Yeah, this translation pulls together traits, especially from chapter 12, but referencing earlier ones too. What makes an ideal devotee?
Right.
Compassion for all beings, no enmity, detachment, equanimity, same in pleasure and pain, avoiding activities that cause excessive entanglement, always seeking divine knowledge, detachment from worldly things, and above all, exclusive devotion to the Lord.
And Arjuna himself.
Is affirmed as having these qualities. That's why the Lord shares this supreme confidential teaching with him, calling him very dear.
So the point is prioritizing knowledge, detachment, devotion.
Even over other seemingly good activities, if those activities lead to more entanglement, focus matters.
Okay. So we've taken quite a deep dive into this specific translation. We've looked at the setting, Arjuna's conflict, which feels so real, the fundamental nature of the soul, the divine as presented here, the different paths, action, knowledge, meditation, devotion.
The sheer scale and nature of the Lord, the vibhutis, the universal form.
And how these big ideas connect down to human nature, faith, sincerity, and just doing your daily actions, your duty.
And hopefully, we've unpacked some key insights, more than just info, maybe some frameworks for you to think about navigating life's challenges, understanding yourself, finding purpose.
Whether you're, prepping for a meeting, catching up on this field, or just curious.
Exactly. It offers a profound perspective.
Absolutely. A way to think about duty, consequence, your place in the grand scheme of things. But here's a thought to leave you with, something this source really underscores again and again.
Go ahead.
Knowing all this information, it isn't the final step. The text insists you must control the mind and senses, act with sincerity, perform your duties with the right mindset, often without chasing the rewards.
Right. The knowing has to translate into being and doing.
Exactly. The Gita lays out this immense knowledge, right, about the universe, the divine, the self. But what does it truly mean to know it if that knowledge doesn't fundamentally change how you act, how you manage your inner world, your relationship with the divine?
That's the challenge.
It seems the text makes a compelling case. True knowledge isn't separate from action, from intention, from devotion. They're all intrinsically linked, something to mull over.